Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers Podcast, episode number 15. I'm Ryan.
I'm Amanda, and we're your hosts.
Today we're going to be talking about Buenos Aires, language school, homestays, and black market transactions.
Yes. So let's start. Why Buenos Aires for language school?
Yeah, I guess if you've been listening to the rest of the episodes, you're like, how did they get to South America? It's a long way from Asia. We're hopping to our most recent trip where we were backpacking in South America for 6 months. And kind of the midpoint of that journey was a stopover in Buenos Aires where we settled down for 2 weeks to do some language school.
Yeah. So one thing about the way that we travel is we tend to go fairly quickly, but it's always with the intention of slowing it down. And so we did really well in Colombia.
What do you mean by traveling quickly with the intention of slowing down?
I just feel like our entire Europe trip was, okay, we should find somewhere to stay for a while.
Yeah.
And then, but we got to get here. Oh, we want to see these things. Okay, we'll stay somewhere else. And then I don't think we ever slowed down.
Yeah. So that's when you talked about going to South America, we're like, first thing, find a cool town, get a language school, and just chill there for a couple of weeks. And then we didn't really do that. And it was something that kind of started to wear at me that much because I wasn't feeling like I was making a lot of progress learning Spanish. And so we talked to a lot of people who had done homestay language school combos, and that's they felt like they made a lot of progress in the situations. And it's something I kind of started to long to do.
Yeah, same with me.
One thing I noticed last time versus traveling versus this most recent time, being a bit older, is a need more for kind of learning, some gratification, and just to feel like I'm learning new things, growing as a human being, practicing stuff. Like I felt like just traveling around and seeing new stuff wasn't as rewarding as learning Spanish.
Yeah, definitely. So the first time that we traveled for me, I was pretty happy just exploring and traveling and kind of just having this freedom with my days. And then after working for 2 years and quitting my job and going traveling again, I was like, I'm 25 and I need a purpose out of this trip. And learning Spanish, personal development, those were two things that gave me a lot of gratification.
Yeah, I think when you can see the results of learning something, that's so rewarding, and it makes me happy. I think it makes people in general happy to see, like when you can look and say like, oh, hey, I can talk to this person today. I couldn't 2 weeks ago. Like, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
definitely. And so along the way, we'd heard from multiple other travelers that Buenos Aires was amazing. And so we're like, let's stop in Buenos Aires. Let's take some time. Let's learn some Spanish. Let's buckle down and let's do this. And, after we booked it and arranged it, we got a lot of counter opinions that was like, oh, Argentina's a really hard place to learn Spanish in. Like, oh, really? Buenos Aires? Like, cool city, but hard place to learn Spanish in. And we're like, whatever, we're doing this. And so how do you feel about that, having done that?
Oh, afterwards, great. Beforehand, I started to get nervous because we had made this plan. We'll do a stopover in Buenos Aires for homestay language school. And then it was kind of hard to find a good language school. It didn't seem like there was a good source of information to be like a good, reliable source of information. And we ended up settling on one. We went through the website of a company called GIC, which through our interactions with them was very vague because it turns out they were just kind of a middleman between us and the actual school we went to, which was called Spanish. I have, almost nothing but good things to say about Spanish. GIC could have done without them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I found them online. They were promoted well through a Google search. Their website was very legitimate. I was like, I feel good about this, but there was a lot of vagueness. It's like, we got an address as to where we're supposed to show up the first day, but we're like, is the language school called GIC? Like what? Like we're confused. Like, why do we not have any additional information? And it's because we did go through this middleman. And, I'm the same way as you. Spanish for me, it was a great experience and I'm happy we did it. But next time I would go straight through Spanish.
Yeah. And I think that's why the weirdness was there for GIC, because they didn't want to tell us, we're just going to book you in with Spanish. Because then we'd say, hey, we're just going to go to Spanish.
Yeah,
and
for
not
sure.
deal with GIC. So the things about being hard place to learn Spanish, Buenos Aires, for anyone who doesn't know, has a very heavy Italian population. So apparently the Italian immigration has influenced the way the Spanish works. So in Buenos Aires and Uruguay, Buenos Aires and Uruguay, the Spanish, which they don't call Spanish or Espanol,
It's Castellano.
takes on a few different tones. The double L becomes a sh, same with the Y, sh, and there's a vos.
It's like vosotros. It's like another conjugation.
No, it's not vosotros. Vosotros is used in Spain as a different kind of we thing. No, it's a you plural. Vos is like, it's used instead of to, but it contains different conjugations.
I refuse to learn it, so I just didn't even write it down in any of my notes.
Yeah, but so when you read about that beforehand, as someone, we'd been doing 2 months of Spanish learning off and on, and it seems like, oh no, this is like an obstacle that we're not going to be able to get around. Like, there's a new form of conjugation, and the sounds are different. Shit, like, we're fucked.
Like, we cannot learn Spanish here. Like, how are we ever going to get by with the Spanish?
But those are like, it's a bit overstated the way I'm saying it, but like, those were some fears I had. I was like, oh, what are we getting? Maybe this was the wrong decision. Some anxiety about committing to it because we had to pay for it beforehand. But really, you can just ignore that. We didn't know enough Spanish to be perturbed by the slight changes in the Argentinian form. And really, after going through that, I came to really like the way Argentinian Spanish is.
Yeah, I like it too. I think it's a nice accent.
And I feel like I came to understand it better than the like Chilean Spanish. And even people said Peru is super clear and easy, but I think it's just whatever you get used to.
Yeah, definitely. And so part of the package that we arranged for was 2 weeks of language school as well as a homestay. And so we knew very little about our homestay prior to arriving. We got the name of the lady we'd be staying with, and her name was actually Amanda. But we didn't know anything else about her. We just showed up her apartment, buzzed her apartment number, and we're like, let's do this, I guess. Like, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And I loved her. I'm thankful every single day that we did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a lot of nerves going in, but everything worked out beautifully. Do you think there was a possibility for it not to work out as well?
No, I don't think so. I think that it was just a lot of, anxiety about staying in somebody's home, anxiety about being in a new place. For me, it was just, anxiety and me concocting these things in my head. Like, oh, what if this family isn't nice? What if this person's mean? What if I can't understand them? All these different things that are running through my head, when really it's like, this is an uncomfortable situation for everybody involved, including her. She's opened her home up to these two people that she doesn't know, and she doesn't speak English, so she doesn't know how well she can communicate with us. Do you think that it could have worked out badly?
Yeah, I think it's possible, because we did have to pay the entire sum of money beforehand, and there isn't a ton of recourse we would have had if we ended up with a homestay we didn't like. And because you have dietary concerns, you're kind of dependent on someone who's going to cook you food that you can eat. And not just give you a tiny side portion of something you can't eat. And thankfully our host was great about the cooking and the conversation. And one thing I really enjoyed about it was I was a little bit stressed about going into a homestay with a family and feeling like I'd go from school to the home and then have to be on all the time.
Yeah, like if you're with children and having to play and...
But I think that would have been a really good experience.
Yeah, I think so too.
But it was the bright side of just being us with an older woman was that we could do breakfast and dinner with her and maybe some interactions here and there. But the other periods of time, we were able to kind of recuperate, rest, and restore, because we were only going 4 hours of language school a day, and then probably 2 hours of homestay conversation a day.
Yeah, so I think we didn't really talk about, so her name was Amanda. She was a woman in her 70s, a single woman, and she had 2 cats. And it was nice because we had our own room and our own bathroom and sort of like separate area in her house. And she was definitely an interesting woman. She loved to travel. She had knickknacks from all over the world. She showed us all of her different travel photos from her trips. Very eclectic woman.
Yeah. Yeah, she was really interesting. We had a couple debates which were hard to engage in Spanish via religion.
And government.
Government as well. But it was very cool to kind of make ourselves at home for 2 weeks. I think that's something that's really refreshing on a long-term backpacking trip, because we had been 3 months at that point of, every 4 days to 1 week. Not even that long, really. Like 4 days kind of was probably the average. Packing your stuff up and moving on. So it was nice to kind of unpack for 2 weeks and to get used to a city, to, develop a favorite restaurant that we go to a couple times to hang out with.
Yeah, and also to get into a routine. So it's okay, we get up at this time, we have breakfast, we go to school, we get the train at this time, classes start at this time, our break is at this time. It was kind of nice to get back into that.
Yeah, I guess you could say it's like having a purpose again.
Yeah.
Because I guess there's a purpose to backpacking, but if it's a little bit undefined, especially if you're not actively thinking about it. And I think prior to that point, I hadn't thought much about what my purpose was. And you go into a situation like this, and it's very clear that the purpose is to learn Spanish. You have that purpose, you can work towards that direction. I think having a purpose and a sense of living purposefully is very important to being happy.
Yeah, I agree for sure. And I think that I was able to find that while in language school. And I think if anything, that 2 weeks of having that purpose really set me forward in a good direction for the rest of the trip in terms of continuing to find that purpose. How can I continue to learn and grow and inspire myself and be a good person? Do you agree?
Yeah. I think that settling down for 2 weeks kind of made me have more energy for going through the actual traveling, like the, packing up and leaving and doing that stuff for quite a while. And now I talk about how, like, having a sense of purpose really made me happy. I didn't really know that at the time, though. I'd kind of been a little bit unhappy in the month or so leading up to that. And I kind of knew, because we had done a bit more strenuous learning of Spanish at points, and I was like, this is really making me feel fulfilled. Whereas just kind of traveling place to place to place to see stuff isn't doing it as much. But then once we did get into that 2 weeks, and I was feeling this sense of purpose, this sense of fulfillment, and I really noticed a big change in myself about feeling a lot happier.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
And then it kind of is like, okay, if I work on Spanish, I'm going to be happier. And if I find a sense of purpose, I'm going to be happier. And that was a good thing to learn.
Yeah, I agree. So with doing the actual language school itself, so there's a few things that come out of that, and social interactions is a big one, because we were in the class with the same people, seeing the same people every day. How did that sort of, change the way you were in terms of a traveler?
Well, so anyone who's been backpacking kind of knows the standard hostel backpacker small talk. Where are you from? Where are you going? How long have you been here? What have you done here? Those kind of questions, which I think, they have value and kind of opening the door to talk to people. And it's always good to find out information about things to do and so forth. But it is nice to get a little bit deeper with people. And I mean, you can do that right off the bat with someone. You can ask them all those deep questions, but it doesn't seem to happen like that. People are a little bit closed off at first. You need to build a bit of a relationship and then kind of work your way into some deeper topics. So it's nice to settle down and really get to know some people over the course of 2 weeks. And it's funny to say over the course of 2 weeks, but it seems like time accelerates in friendship building when you're traveling.
Yeah.
At home, it's like, oh, I just met them 2 weeks ago. I don't really know them. Versus on traveling, it's like, oh yeah, we've been hanging out for 2 weeks. Like, we're best friends. Like, I'm going to go to Switzerland and stay at their house.
Yeah, completely. And one of the things that I really do love about traveling is how a stranger becomes a friend within 5 minutes. I think that it's amazing that you can build this connection with somebody so quickly just based on the fact that you're in the same city with sort of the same general purpose of, wanting to travel and experience something new, and then just being in the same dorm room.
Yeah. Why do you think people are more open to social interaction while they're traveling? Do you think it's like a loneliness thing, or do you think maybe pulling themselves out of their social circle kind of allows them to step into who they are, and then they're more receptive to other people?
I think it's both. You do have this loneliness, especially when you are in a country where you don't know the language and you don't have friends. And so you meet people that you have these commonalities with, and you're like, oh, we have something in common. Like, we can be friends. And then on top of it, it's also, you have stepped out of your social situations and you've entered a city and you're like, nobody knows me here. I'm anonymous and I can be whoever I want to be today. And for me, I can be me today because nobody has any expectations for me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty good explanation of it, the way the feeling works. And so that's one of the things that was really enjoyable of settling down in Buenos Aires for us. And I think if any language school situation, you get the one side of it is if you're going to stop to do a language school, you're going to learn some language, which I think brings happiness and fulfillment. And then you're going to get to meet people. That's kind of when people evaluate doing stuff, a lot of times they kind of evaluate it on its own merits instead of thinking about, I don't want to say people, maybe this is just me. I kind of think about, this tour, I don't really want to see this place that much, but every tour has the opportunity for meeting people. So like if you have no desire to go learn a language, you can still go to language school and, meet a whole bunch of cool people and go party, hang out, socialize all day, and just, you just get to know them because you're there.
Yeah, for sure. And, we just did 4 hours of language school a day. It was 9 until 1. And then we had the rest of our day free. So our days sort of became, we'd go for lunch with a friend from school or a few friends from school, and then we would explore the city.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really had the opportunity to get to know Buenos Aires. And then the language school was great because it put on a lot of activities. So we got to go do free mate tasting by the river.
Yeah, learn about yerba mate and the kind of tradition involved with it. Tango lessons. Yeah,
we took tango lessons. For those of you who don't know Ryan, dancing's not really Ryan's forte. So this was definitely something out of his comfort zone, and he rocked it.
I don't know about to rock.
Tangoed it. Both of us felt kind of uncomfortable because obviously we partnered with each other. And then the instructor goes, okay, now switch partners. And I mean, I have that initial fear, like, what if nobody wants to be my partner? What if I'm like the last person to get chosen type thing? That's an initial fear I have. And then it's this fear of like, okay, tango's kind of a really close dancing experience. Like, I don't really want somebody else in my bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And so overcoming that awkwardness was good. Yeah.
So going forward, the next time you go traveling is picking a spot and doing some language school something that's going to be on your itinerary?
For sure. And along with that is doing a homestay.
Yeah, that was a big part.
I would love to have done a homestay in every country we went to.
I think I probably learned more Spanish in the homestay than at the language school.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way. So the homestay was really valuable for, we got to eat some really good home cooked Argentinian food. We got to really learn Spanish with somebody who's Argentinian. And then language school was more, we got to settle down. We got to make some friends at more of a deeper level. We got to do some good social interactions.
Yeah. I think a lot of the new information on language learning, like the language hacking stuff, is really anti-language school. Even like a lot of language programs like Rosetta Stone. Like, you don't need that. You just need to go out and talk with people. But the thing about it is, like, language school is just like a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I think there's better ways. My 4 hours a day could have been put to use more efficiently at learning Spanish, but I had plenty of hours each day, and those 4 hours did help me to learn the language, and they also just provided me with this great situation to meet people and have fun and cool experience. So I definitely think if I go traveling again, I would really love to do something similar. And we met a guy who was doing language school in Buenos Aires for 2 weeks, and then going to Madrid and doing language school for 2 weeks. Like, it would be cool to kind of hop about and doing that. I think that's one of the beautiful things about South America, having Spanish as being this kind of binding force where you can go to different places and get different experiences with the language, versus if you wanted to go travel Asia, Eastern Europe, you can't really hop as much around learning the language.
Yeah, it's definitely more difficult when every country speaks a different language. If you're to do it in Europe, it'd be, French, Spanish, Portuguese, German, Dutch, Swiss German. Like, that's difficult. You'd have to be like a language. I don't even know. Can anybody learn language that quickly?
Polyglot.
Is that what it's called?
That's what you learn if you know a bunch of language. I think learning one language helps you learn another language.
Yeah,
There's very
definitely.
much a structure of languages that you learn, and then you can learn to just apply these new forms to that structure that you've learned. But I think it would be an enjoyable experience to go travel different countries and just kind of settle down and spend a few weeks learning each individual language.
Yeah.
Like, I think too many people get caught up in evaluating what they're going to get out of it. It's like, oh, I don't want to learn Czech because I'm never going to be able to apply it. And they forget that the process of learning a language is actually really fun.
Yeah. And I think that, I've definitely struggled with the concept of like, why would I learn this? How is it going to better me? Can I put it on my resume? That sort of thing. And it's learning anything is valuable. It's just the process of learning. It's valuable and it's fun and it's very gratifying.
Yeah. And I think that the education system, especially in North America, really robs us of that. We kind of come to learn by obligation. So it removes the fun from it, because it's like, oh, you've got to learn this because like it sucks, the stuff they're teaching. They're teaching by telling you what to learn, so you don't want to learn it. But then they justify it with these down the road things like, oh, you'll make more money, go to better university, stuff like that. So then we kind of come to see learning as this not fun thing, and this thing that there's no point in learning unless there is, I'm going to get X benefit from it. And you lose the reality that, just being human, it's fun to learn stuff.
Yeah.
It's gratifying. It makes you happy.
And really the benefit of learning is the learning itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah. It's just doing it. And then learning stuff helps you learn other stuff.
Yeah. Pro learning over here. So in terms of choosing Buenos Aires, obviously we both didn't regret that decision. What were some things outside of language school that you loved about Buenos Aires or didn't love?
Well, I didn't love the subway, which is called the subte. Subte, I guess would be the pronunciation, which is the most cramped I've ever been on a train in my life. It was, yeah.
You mean you didn't love standing there, being jostled around, having people sweat on you?
No, I didn't like my face in the armpits of other people.
Oh, that's weird. I kind of like that. Kidding. That's sarcasm in case anybody didn't catch that. The subte was a not great experience, and that was definitely one thing I was happy to leave behind when we left Buenos Aires.
Yeah, and usually I don't like cities. Like, I feel like there's tension and too much stress there for me, but I think it was partly because we were in a good situation, but I found like Buenos Aires to kind of have this more of this like buzzing energy that I was like feeling positive about versus like this kind of stressful thing wearing me down.
Yeah, and so we made time to see kind of the major tourist things there. And to be honest, Buenos Aires is not so much about the sights, but the experiences that you can have there. So going to an authentic tango show. And when I say authentic, I mean there's ones that are put on for tourists and there are ones that locals will go to.
But the tango isn't really meant. It's a participatory thing. It's not a spectacle.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot of cool places where you can go, and people who are just really good at tango will be tangoing, and it's kind of just like it's almost like an open mic, but with tango. It's like anybody can go and tango dance, but some really good people will go there, and lots of people will just go, get a glass of wine or a beer and just enjoy it. Yeah.
And Buenos Aires has a really cool bar restaurant scene, like tons and tons of good restaurants and places to go. Specifically, we were staying in Palermo, which is like what people go there seem to call like one of the cool areas.
Yeah, it's trendy.
Palermo's a very big area. There's like Palermo Alto, Palermo Hollywood, Palermo Soho, like all these sub Palermo regions. But like there's lots of cool cafes and bars,
malls.
And in Argentina right now, the economy's having a lot of problems, which is really bad for people within Argentina. But as a tourist, it makes the price of things way cheaper, specifically because you can bring in US dollars and trade them on what's called the blue market, which is effectively the black market. But
yeah, so we had been told beforehand, as people are like, oh, where are you going next? And it's like, oh, Uruguay, Argentina. And it's like, oh, have you heard about the dollar situation in Argentina? No. Okay. You need to bring in American dollars. And so fortunately we crossed from Uruguay, and in Uruguay, you have the option with almost every ATM to either take out Uruguayan currency or American currency. Uruguayan currency. So we entered Argentina pretty well stocked up with American dollars.
Yeah.
And, one of my big travel things is to never have too much money on me, because I don't want to get robbed and lose, $700. I just don't want that to happen when I'm not sitting there rolling in a ton of disposable income.
Yeah. And that's one thing we're usually really conscious of, is kind of preparing to get mugged.
Yeah, and we kind of did make an exception entering into Argentina, and we were fine. We took the ferry over from Colonia in Uruguay and took a cab straight to our homestay in Buenos Aires, and then we changed our money sort of slowly. And we did use the blue market, or the black market, but we waited to find out legitimate sources from people.
Yeah. It was nice, another reason being at the language school, because you can talk to one. We went to kind of a shady exchange that exchanged at like a pretty good rate, but not great. And then we talked to someone from the school who was going to this shop that sold like little girls' clothing that was doing like exchange at like a better rate. Because if anyone doesn't know what's happening there, the government's pegged the price of US dollars at something like 8. I think they're slowly raising it. Pesos per dollar. But so all the legal exchanges and banks will only trade at that rate. But obviously the demand for dollars is high because inflation is so high. So you can go onto the street and there's lots of people who are all yelling, cambio, 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 change US dollar, some version of that over and over and over again. Because they'll buy your US dollars at a rate 50% or more higher than the official rate.
Yeah.
So then you go trade your US dollars for Argentinian pesos, and then your money goes a long way in Argentina right now. That's obviously not a stable situation. I think it's probably going to be hard for a lot of businesses to survive in a situation like that, but at the moment, there's lots of good stuff to do.
Yeah, and I mean, being a tourist coming in with, or being a traveler coming in with American money and being able to exchange it at this rate is extremely, beneficial for us. Our money went way, way further, like you said.
Mm-hmm. And so if you were thinking, if someone's listening to this, they're going to South America, they're debating where to do language school, what are some of the other spots that we kind of thought would be good?
Well, we did do some language school in Sucre in Bolivia, and I would have loved to stay longer in that little town. It was probably my favorite place in Bolivia.
And one of the nice things about Sucre would be a little bit less expensive, so you could do probably, 50% longer at the same price in Sucre versus Buenos Aires, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. And then another place that we spent a week doing language school was Cusco. And I really liked staying in Cusco for a week. Would you recommend there?
Yeah, I would say that it's probably on my list of top 5 places to do it. That list would probably include Buenos Aires, Sucre, Medellin, Colombia, and Santiago. I know I've quite a few people who are doing it in Bariloche in Argentina, which would be a really cool place to do it as well.
Yeah, Bariloche is in the Lake District, and it's beautiful. Lots of outdoor stuff to do. It's kind of like a ski town. I mean, it is a ski town. We were there in summertime though, so there was no skiing. But it's nice because it's smaller. It's not as big as somewhere like Buenos Aires or Medellin. And
I know a lot of people do it in Lima too. And I had this feeling when we talked to people who did it in Lima or Santiago, kind of like this, oh, it's cool that you're doing it here, but it would have been cooler if you did it in Buenos Aires. If you're looking for that big city vibe, I don't think the other big cities kind of matched Buenos Aires for like kind of the life of the city.
It's just like, it's so like it's buzzing. The energy there is so great. Like people are trendy. The restaurants are trendy. It's busy all the time. There's always something to do. It's fun. It's safe. There's just so many great things about Buenos Aires.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it would definitely be close to the top of my list of places that I could and would live in South America.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be a place I'd like to go back to. Well, I don't think it would be a place I'd like to go back to. I think it will be a place I will go back to.
Yeah, me too. For sure.
So we're going to post some show notes on our website.
www.theworldwanders.com.
Yes, Amanda will work on her sarcasm. So hopefully that won't be as awkward on the next episode.
Thanks, Ryan.
And
what are you working on?
I don't have to work on my sarcasm at all.
So what are you going to work on? Or are you just perfect?
I don't know. We'll include that on the show notes on theworldwanderers.com.
Stay tuned for what Ryan will be working on.
Hasta luego.
Ciao.